Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission is, well, it's always the same. Take a stack of dense, detailed source material and synthesize it into clear, surprising, and truly useful knowledge for you.
And today, we're really getting into one of those topics that's just hiding in plain sight.
Absolutely. We are undertaking a deep dive into a company that operates so fundamentally beneath the surface of our daily lives that, most people have never even heard its name. We're talking about the CF Industries Holdings, Inc.
It's the perfect deep dive topic, really, because it pulls back the curtain on one of the most structural, non-negotiable dependencies in modern global civilization.
So what is it they actually do?
At its core, CF Industries is an American manufacturer and distributor of agricultural fertilizers. Their headquarters are right outside Chicago in a suburb called Northbrook, Illinois.
They don't make the food we eat, but they make the stuff that makes the food grow. And we're discussing nitrogen products, ammonia, urea, and ammonium nitrate, which are, they're the absolute cornerstones of modern crop yield.
They really are. And our comprehensive source material for this dive tracks the company's whole journey. It's a pretty dramatic corporate evolution, starting as a post-war farmer co-op and ending up as an S&P 500 powerhouse.
And that journey, as we're going to unpack, doesn't just end with them being a big, successful company. It culminates in this spectacular and almost unbelievable event in 2021.
Right. A simple operational decision made in an Illinois boardroom by this one company ended up causing a critical national supply chain crisis across the entire United Kingdom.
It sounds like science fiction, but it's real. So the mission for us today is clear: to uncover how a manufacturer of essential fertilizer became so thoroughly embedded in global infrastructure that its day-to-day operations became a matter of immediate national security for a foreign government.
And it perfectly illustrates the surprising fragility and, the complex interlocking nature of global industry.
Fragility is the right word.
Well, and that fragility stems directly from their core function. Providing nitrogen fertilizer isn't a peripheral business. It is the absolute linchpin of global caloric supply. A major player like CF Industries, by definition, holds immense relevance far beyond its balance sheet.
Okay, let's unpack this. I think we need to start by just establishing the sheer scale of this Illinois-based chemical giant. Because until you understand the scope of their financial and physical footprint, the rest of the story, the historical shifts, and the eventual crisis, it just won't make sense.
That's the right place to start. If you look at the corporate profile provided in the sources, you quickly realize this isn't just a successful company, it's an industrial behemoth. In the agrochemical sector, CF Industries is a foundational player.
And the products, they sound technical, but they're actually incredibly important to grasp: ammonia, urea, and ammonium nitrate.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Ammonia, its chemical formula is NH3, is the foundational compound. It's the building block. It's synthesized under extreme heat and pressure, and it's the source material for all other nitrogen fertilizers.
So everything starts with ammonia.
Everything starts there. Then you have urea, which is essentially just concentrated nitrogen. It's much safer to transport than ammonia, and farmers often use it as a direct soil application, or they mix it with water to create these UAN solutions, which stands for urea ammonium nitrate.
Okay, and the last one, ammonium nitrate.
That one is highly concentrated and very potent as a fertilizer, but it's also subject to much stricter regulation. For obvious reasons. It has explosive properties if it's mishandled. So these three forms are basically how industrial farming delivers the single most important nutrient nitrogen to crops all over the world.
So CF Industries is essentially mass-producing the fuel for high-yield agriculture. And their financial profile, I'm guessing, matches that indispensable role.
It does. Looking specifically at the 2020 data available in our sources, they recorded US $4.124 billion in revenue. That's a billion with a B.
$4 billion in revenue, that's a serious number.
But maybe more telling than the revenue is the physical weight of the company. Their total assets were valued at a staggering US $12.172 billion in 2020.
$12 billion in assets.
Wow. And that asset base, it speaks volumes about the infrastructure. We are talking about massive, high-pressure chemical plants, enormous storage tanks, dedicated rail and pipeline networks, and long-term land leases. This isn't a software company with servers. This is hard, physical, industrial might.
That asset value is truly immense, and it helps frame the industry. To operate facilities that can synthesize ammonia, you need immense capital investment, constant maintenance, and significant safety redundancy given the pressures and temperatures involved.
And it's an industry where scale provides efficiency. Despite that massive $12 billion asset base, the company managed its operations with a surprisingly specialized, though relatively small, workforce.
How small are we talking?
Just 3,016 employees in 2020. That ratio of assets to employees really confirms the capital-intensive and highly automated nature of large-scale chemical manufacturing. The profitability is all tied to maximizing the throughput in those billion-dollar facilities.
And that stability and scale, it's recognized far beyond the agricultural commodity trading floors, right? They're publicly traded.
They are on the NYSE, the New York Stock Exchange, under the ticker CF. And critically, they are part of the S&P 500 index.
And for anyone listening, being in the S&P 500 isn't just a vanity thing.
Not at all. That inclusion, which happened back in 2008, is the Financial World Stamp of Approval. It designates them as a large-cap stock whose performance is considered representative of a vital segment of the overall U.S. economy. They are viewed as a foundational, systemic player.
And there's this fantastic historical nugget from the sources about that. When CF Industries was added to the S&P 500 in 2008, they replaced Electronics Data Systems, or EDS.
Right, Ross Perot's old company.
Exactly. And that transition is really symbolic, isn't it? The market was signaling a shift in what it considered a foundational value. It was moving away from a legacy information technology services provider and towards the essential hard asset commodity producers that literally underpin our ability to feed ourselves.
It confirmed their status as an integrated and an essential component of the national economic framework. And that framework is supported by an operational capacity that spans the globe.
Right. Even though the corporate office is in Northbrook, Illinois, the operational muscle extends internationally. How extensive is that physical network?
The company operates 9 major manufacturing complexes worldwide. And these are not small factories. These are sprawling industrial parks dedicated to high-volume chemical synthesis. They're built to ensure massive, consistent output.
And their focus on the core product is clear. The sources specify that these complexes contain a total of 17 dedicated ammonia plants.
17! That is a huge concentration of highly complex, specialized industrial capacity.
And to really appreciate the scale, we have to point out the flagship location. The sources highlight that their single largest ammonia plant is located in Donaldsonville, Louisiana.
Which is just a brilliant strategic location.
Why there specifically? I assume it's not random.
Not at all. Being right on the Mississippi River gives them unparalleled logistical advantages. You have easy access for barges to move product up and down the country directly into the vast agricultural heartland.
So distribution is key. Does it also offer advantages in sourcing the primary raw material?
Absolutely. The Gulf Coast region, and Louisiana in particular, is just crisscrossed with natural gas infrastructure. And natural gas is the critical feedstock and the fuel for ammonia production. Donaldsonville's location maximizes proximity to both the raw material, the natural gas, and the distribution network, the waterways and pipelines needed to serve the corn, soy, and wheat belts of the Midwest.
So we've established the scale. Billions in assets, S&P 500 status, and these massive strategically located plants. Now let's pivot to the history, because the origin story of this corporate titan is surprisingly humble. And it reveals this foundational change in its organizational DNA.
It really does. The company you see today, which is aggressive and globally focused, started with a completely different mindset.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me. Because the foundational identity of this multi-billion-dollar corporation was rooted deeply in service, not necessarily profit.
It was founded in 1946, right in the immediate aftermath of the Second World War. The name back then was the Central Farmers Fertilizer Company. You know, post-war agriculture was rapidly industrializing, and farmers needed reliable, high-volume inputs to keep up.
And for its first 56 years, that's over half a century, it was structured entirely differently from how it is now. It was organized as a federation of regional agricultural supply cooperatives.
And this is the crucial historical distinction. Under a cooperative model, the ownership and the control, they rest with the members, and the members are typically the customers.
So in this case, the farmers themselves.
Exactly. The regional co-ops and the farmers they served were the true owners. The primary goal wasn't maximizing return on equity for external shareholders. It was stable supply and affordability. It was about ensuring the inputs were available at the best possible cost for the farmers.
It's the definition of a closed-loop system designed to serve the agricultural community directly. The sources say they adopted the shorter name, CF Industries, in 1971, but that basic co-op structure, It remained the same for decades.
And that co-op structure instills immense stability and a deep connection to the user base. But it also creates some severe limitations, particularly when your capital needs start to soar.
How so?
Well, as agriculture expanded and the complexity of chemical production increased, you just needed massive amounts of capital, billions of dollars for plant upgrades, for maintenance, for technological modernization.
So what were the specific limitations? Did the co-op structure prevent them from tapping into the deep pockets of the public market?
Precisely. Cooperatives can only really fund growth in two ways. Either through their retained earnings, their profits, or through loans. They cannot issue stock to the public. So as CF Industries realized it needed billions to compete, to modernize its aging facilities, and potentially to acquire rivals, that co-op structure became a major constraint on its strategic ambition.
It was a choice.
It was a choice between remaining regionally focused, stable but constrained, or unlocking global potential by tapping into public markets.
And the sources confirmed they chose the latter. The fundamental structural change happened in 2002 when the company demutualized. That is the corporate pivot point.
And demutualization is a massive undertaking. It involves dissolving that whole member ownership structure and converting the mutual organization into a stock company. This wasn't just some paperwork change. It was a fundamental shift in corporate DNA.
A shift in who they answered to.
Exactly. You're moving the fiduciary responsibility from the farmer owners to the future public shareholders.
I have to imagine the transition was fraught with tension. I mean, did the farmers, the longtime owners, feel betrayed?
Yeah.
Or were they compensated for relinquishing that ownership?
The process typically involves compensating the members for their ownership stake, so they would have gotten either cash or shares in the newly public company. But the philosophical shift is undeniable. Suddenly, the driving mandate is shareholder value, not farmer benefit.
And the sources highlight that this move is what unlocked the potential for the rapid growth we're about to discuss.
It did. The actual jump to the public markets happened with the initial public offering, the IPO, in 2005. That's when equity stock was officially sold to the public for the first time.
And that move confirmed the new strategic direction. And as we noted earlier, it led directly to that S&P 500 inclusion in 2008.
The story of CF Industries is a perfect example of corporate evolution. You start with a strong, service-oriented mission, you build this immense physical infrastructure, you encounter capital limitations, and finally, you embrace the public markets to fuel hyper-aggressive growth and industrial consolidation.
And once they made that pivot, they wasted no time leveraging that new financial power. Once the capital structure allowed it, the aggressive expansion strategy truly began, establishing CF Industries as a dominant player not just regionally, but globally.
That's right. The capital raised through the IPO provided the ammunition for major strategic moves, starting with a massive acquisition that redefined the company's entire footprint.
Let's detail the centerpiece of this strategy, the takeover of Terra Industries, Inc., in April 2010.
What made Terra so appealing, and what kind of environment did this acquisition happen in?
Terra Industries was a major competitor, especially strong in North American production and distribution. So acquiring them was a way for CF Industries to instantly consolidate the market and gain superior operational efficiency through scale.
But this was a high-stakes corporate drama.
It really was. The negotiations were protracted, and the sources show there was intense rival interest. It wasn't a simple, friendly purchase.
Right. The sources highlight this fierce bidding war. The rival fertilizer giant Agrium was simultaneously trying to purchase CF Industries itself, which shows you how desirable CF was becoming. And at the same time, the Norwegian firm Yara International was trying to purchase Terra. This corporate jostling, it just illustrates how strategically vital this industry is. You have these major players locked in a global fight for market share and for control over these essential assets. Ultimately, CF Industries fended off the takeover attempts against itself and successfully acquired Terra Industries.
So what did that acquisition immediately bring to CF Industries? What was the prize?
Immediate, massive scale expansion. Primarily, they gained 5 production complexes across North America, which significantly boosted their nitrogen production capacity. But crucially, the acquisition gave them immediate, vital international footholds.
Which were?
They acquired a 50% interest in a joint venture in Point Lisa's Trinidad.
Why is Trinidad so important?
Trinidad is incredibly important because it has abundant, low-cost natural gas. And since that's the main cost in making ammonia, it's a huge competitive advantage. They also acquired a 50% interest in the Grow-How joint venture in the United Kingdom.
So they weren't just buying rival assets on their home turf. They were buying direct access to cheaper feedstocks in Trinidad. and strategic distribution and manufacturing capabilities right in the middle of the lucrative European market through the UK. That's textbook strategic growth.
It is, but shortly after this massive accumulation, they showed a really sharp strategic focus by streamlining their portfolio.
That's the interesting contrast here. By 2013, CF Industries agreed to sell its entire phosphate business to another giant, Mosaic Company. And this was a significant strategic divestiture, netting them $1.4 billion in cash.
This move confirms an aggressive decision. CF Industries was going all in on nitrogen. They recognized that while phosphate and potash are also essential fertilizers, their core competitive advantage lay in the complex, energy-intensive, and volatile nitrogen sector.
So they were doubling down on what they did best.
Exactly. Selling the phosphate business not only raised substantial capital, but it allowed them to dedicate 100% of their operational research and managerial focus to ammonia and its derivatives.
It's corporate optimization in action. They traded a diverse portfolio for hyperdominance in a single high-stakes segment. And they used that focus to solidify their control over their key international footholds.
Absolutely. 2 years later, in 2015, they acquired the remaining 50% interest in the UK's Growhow venture from Yara International. They paid $580 million for it.
So that move completed the integration. By taking full ownership, they brought the UK facilities, which were in Billingham and Ince, completely under the CF Industries banner. They ensured that these operations would adhere to their global strategic plan.
And this total integration is a critical point that really sets the stage for the crisis later on.
It is.
It demonstrates their ultimate confidence in the UK operation at the time, but also their desire for complete centralized control over their asset base. But the peak of their ambition was still yet to come. It was a bid for truly global, undisputed leadership.
Which brings us to the proposed $8 billion mega merger with OCI in 2015. This wasn't just consolidation. This was a move to redefine the entire industry structure.
It was incredibly ambitious. The plan was to combine CF Industries with OCI European, North American, and global distribution businesses. This would have created a colossus with unparalleled global reach in nitrogen production.
And this proposed combination included a fascinating, if complex, wrinkle. The sources call it the domicile twist. The plan was for the combined company to be legally domiciled in the United Kingdom while still retaining the CF Industries name.
That decision was a classic corporate inversion strategy. By moving the legal headquarters to the UK, the new entity, even though it would be operationally led from the US, could potentially benefit from lower corporate tax rates or a more favorable regulatory regime.
So it was a financial move as much as an operational one.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This highlights that CF Industries was focused not just on operational scale, but on maximizing financial efficiency on a global stage. This was a direct move to become the world's undisputed #1 in nitrogen.
But despite the strategic rationale and the massive price tag, the sources confirmed this proposed combination was terminated in May 2016. What derailed such a crucial, high-ambition deal?
Well, there are often multiple layers to the failure of such massive cross-border deals. While the specifics are complex, the general headwinds were pretty significant. First, these kinds of deals often attract intense regulatory scrutiny from governments worried about antitrust issues and market dominance.
And the other factor?
Second, the political and regulatory environment around those corporate inversion schemes, it shifted significantly right around 2016. The U.S. Treasury Department, in particular, introduced new rules to make them less attractive. So the tax benefits became less certain, and the whole deal structure became less palatable to shareholders.
So it becomes a crucial corporate anecdote. You can have the strategic vision, the financial backing, and the operational intent, but if the regulatory or the political environment shifts, a multi-billion-dollar merger can just collapse overnight.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even in something as fundamental as commodity production, corporate strategy is deeply intertwined with global tax policy and political feasibility.
But even without the OCI merger, CF Industries remained a consolidated, dominant global player, particularly with that full control of its integrated UK assets. Assets that would soon become the focus of a national emergency.
That's the perfect transition. We've traced this company from a farmer-owned cooperative to a global consolidator. Now we arrive at 2021, and this astonishing reality that this fertilizer producer became the unexpected cause of a national food supply crisis in the UK.
And the entire vulnerability hinges on the mechanics of their industry, specifically the cost of natural gas and the importance of a simple byproduct.
This incident is a perfect illustration of what happens when the hidden dependencies of an industrialized society are exposed to an economic shock. The crisis started simply. In September 2021, CF Industries halted operations at both of its UK production complexes, Billingham and Ince.
And the driver, as confirmed by the sources, was the sharply rising price of natural gas.
And you have to appreciate just why natural gas is so existential to CF Industries. When you make ammonia, NH3, through what's called the Haber-Bosch process, natural gas plays two crucial roles.
Okay, what are they?
First, it's the intense energy source needed to power the massive compressors and heat exchangers. It's the fuel. But second, and this is crucial, it is the feedstock. It provides the hydrogen component, the H2, that is stripped from methane in the natural gas to combine with nitrogen, the N2, that's pulled from the air.
So it's both the fuel for the factory and the key ingredient for the product.
Precisely. So when natural gas prices spiked dramatically, which they did in late 2021, driven by tight post-lockdown supply and early indications of geopolitical instability, the cost of both your fuel and your raw materials skyrockets simultaneously.
The economics just fall apart.
The economics simply break. The cost of running the plant and buying the raw gas exceeds the profitable selling price of the resulting fertilizer. The sources confirm that CF Industries determined it was economically non-viable to operate the plants, and so they just shut them down immediately.
Now, on the surface, that sounds like a localized problem for the farming sector. Fertilizer supply might be constrained, but why did a fertilizer plant closure cause an immediate and critical nationwide shortage of food-grade CO2?
This is the massive, unforeseen supply chain vulnerability. Food-grade CO2 carbon dioxide is not CF Industries' core product. It is a necessary byproduct of their main operation.
Can you walk us through that specific chemical link? How does making ammonia produce CO2 that you can put in a can of soda?
Sure. So when you strip hydrogen from natural gas, which is mostly methane, to get the feedstock for ammonia, you end up with excess carbon. That carbon, mixed with oxygen from the air, is purified into CO2.
So it's a waste product they've learned to capture.
A very valuable one. In these large-scale chemical plants, the CO2 is captured, it's compressed, and it's purified to a very high standard, a food-grade standard, because it's a reliable, high-volume source. The purification process is already built right into the ammonia production train.
So the fertilizer factories are, by default, the most reliable and highest volume domestic suppliers of food-grade CO2. And when the ammonia plants shut down because the gas price made the core product unprofitable, the critical CO2 supply stream just evaporated overnight.
And the sources clearly spell out the immense dependency. CF Industries' UK facility supplied a massive 60% of the entire country's food-grade CO2.
60% from just two factories.
60%. Imagine losing 3/5 of your national supply of any critical industrial input instantly.
That creates a crisis that quickly metastasizes across the entire food chain. It affects sectors you would never, ever link to fertilizer production. We know beer and soft drinks rely on CO2 for carbonation, that's the obvious one, but the deeper impact is on food packaging and meat processing.
The consequences for the food industry were immediate and severe. Take food packaging. CO2 is essential for what's called modified atmosphere packaging, or MAP.
That's when they seal the plastic on, like a package of chicken or salad.
Exactly. That technique replaces the oxygen inside the package with a mixture of gases, often including CO2, which dramatically slows spoilage and extends the shelf life for meats, prepared meals, produce, you name it. Without CO2, products spoil faster, leading to potentially massive food waste and huge distribution bottlenecks.
And the impact on meat processing was perhaps the most acute and, ethically challenging.
Absolutely. In modern meat processing, CO2 is the standard gas used for the humane stunning of livestock, pigs, and poultry before slaughter. Losing 60% of the CO2 supply meant that slaughterhouses could not operate at full capacity.
Which leads to a backlog.
A backlog that leads to potential animal welfare issues and a severe, immediate risk to the stability of the entire meat supply chain. Farmers were facing the horrific prospect of having nowhere to send their animals for processing.
That is what makes this story so powerful. An economic decision about gas prices made by a global conglomerate focused on fertilizer threatened to halt the UK's ability to humanely process and package its basic foodstuffs. The government had to move immediately.
They did. The political pressure was immense because they recognized this as a critical national vulnerability, not just some market fluctuation.
And the sources confirm the intervention came swiftly. On September 21st, 2021, the UK government announced a short-term arrangement. This was a direct emergency injection of cash into the private sector.
The mechanism was pretty unprecedented. The government provided limited financial support to CF Industries for a period of just 3 weeks. The key here is the specificity and the timeline. It wasn't a long-term bailout of the fertilizer industry.
The goal was razor-focused.
It was. It was to immediately restart operations and CO2 production at just one of the plants, the Billingham Teesside plant. It was an essential triage effort to get the byproduct flowing again to save the food industry, even if the primary fertilizer business was still running at a loss because of the high gas prices.
So this forced the UK government into a really peculiar position. They were essentially subsidizing the production of ammonia, a commodity traded on global markets, just to secure a completely different, nationally critical byproduct.
It shows the incredible leverage CF Industries held by controlling such a dominant share of that CO2 output. The government had no choice. They had to pay the company to operate or face a national food crisis.
But 3 weeks of subsidy, that only addresses the immediate political crisis. It doesn't solve the underlying economic problem of persistent high gas prices, nor does it address environmental policy.
And that's the critical long-term fallout. Despite that temporary governmental support, the economic forces just proved too strong. In June of 2022, CF Industries permanently shut down their second UK fertilizer factory, the one located in Ince, Cheshire.
And the official reasons given by CF Industries were the continuing high gas prices combined with environmental taxes. This confirms that the cost equation for operating large-scale, energy-intensive chemical manufacturing in the UK against volatile global energy markets and specific tax regimes was simply unfavorable for their global portfolio.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the permanent closure of that Ince plant, which was part of that critical 60% national CO2 supply, represents a permanent reduction in the UK's domestic production capacity. This reliance has now shifted even more dramatically to imports or potentially to other, less efficient domestic CO2 sources.
The sources quote experts who are warning that this leaves the national food supply vulnerable. And it's just a perfect modern case study. A company's profit-driven strategic decision necessitated by global energy volatility leads directly to the permanent destabilization of essential national infrastructure.
So we've seen CF Industries Holdings, Inc. journey from a farmers cooperative designed to serve the community's agricultural needs through this necessary transformation into an S&P 500 member focused on global dominance and efficiency.
And finally, it became an accidental but essential player in a national supply chain crisis centered not on their core product, fertilizer, but on a critical industrial byproduct.
It's an incredible story of unexpected dependence. It just reveals how tightly wound our global industrialized systems truly are.
So what's the big takeaway from all this?
The CF Industries story, I think, it shows that even in essential industries like fertilizer, the reliance on a single energy-intensive feedstock natural gas, in this case, creates massive operational risk and cost sensitivity. And furthermore, the critical feature of byproducts, like food-grade CO2, means the economic viability of one industry dictates the survival of several others downstream.
These are deep, often hidden vulnerabilities.
Exactly. They're vulnerabilities that are exposed only when external economic pressure pushes the operational envelope past its breaking point.
Absolutely. The modern global food chain, it starts right here at the production of industrial nitrogen. It's the invisible, capital-intensive starting line for modern food security, and its stability is entirely dependent on external factors like energy market volatility and strategic corporate decisions.
We so often focus on the consumer end of the supply chain, right? The cost of groceries, the logistics of transport, the packaging itself. But the true fragility lies buried at the source in the profitability of high-pressure chemical plants.
So given the global volatility of energy markets and the permanent disruption that resulted from the CF Industries shutdown in the UK, it raises a crucial question for you, the listener. What other essential industrial byproducts are hiding in plain sight, absolutely necessary for daily life, but dependent entirely on the continued profitable operation of a completely different core product?
Is it specialized chemicals needed for microchips dependent on the waste stream of a totally different petrochemical process? Is it a critical medical-grade gas that's dependent on the economic viability of steel manufacturing? The CF Industries CO2 crisis wasn't a fluke, it was a warning. A warning that the interconnectivity of our industrial supply chains creates vulnerabilities we rarely map until it's far too late.
Something to mull over the next time you enjoyed a perfectly packaged meal or a cold carbonated drink.